What if the greatest power you've been overlooking was the simple act of keeping quiet? Have you ever noticed that the people who talk the most about their goals are often the ones who achieve the least? There's a hidden pattern at work here, one that the most successful individuals throughout history have understood and leveraged to create extraordinary results. Today, we're diving deep into why working in silence might be the most underrated strategy for achieving your biggest dreams. Has this ever happened to you? You get excited about a new goal, perhaps starting a business, losing weight, or learning a new skill, and immediately tell everyone you know. You feel that initial rush of excitement as people congratulate you on your ambition. But then something strange happens. Weeks pass, and you realize you've made little actual progress. The energy you felt at the beginning somehow disappeared into thin air. What you're about to discover might explain exactly why this happens and how to prevent it. The truth is, there's a fascinating psychological mechanism at work when we announce our intentions to the world. Each time you share your plans, your brain experiences a premature sense of accomplishment, a false reward that tricks you into feeling you've already made progress when you've done nothing but talk. This phenomenon, backed by research, explains why so many dreams never materialize beyond conversation. The very excitement that should fuel your action gets dissipated through endless discussion. Throughout history, the most transformative achievements were born in silence. When you work quietly without broadcasting your every move, you conserve vital energy for actual progress, rather than wasting it seeking validation from others. Think about it. True power never needs to announce itself. It simply manifests in results that speak volumes louder than any declaration ever could. The noise of explanation literally steals from the power of execution. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to share exactly how you can harness this principle to finally achieve those goals you've been talking about for years. You'll learn why the greatest minds in history, from Einstein to Edison, deliberately chose to work in seclusion until their creations were ready to change the world. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The most successful people understand something that others miss entirely. They recognize the invisible tax we pay when we constantly explain our process instead of simply engaging in it. Every conversation about what you're going to do represents energy that could have been invested in actually doing it. Every premature celebration weakens your resolve to push through the inevitable challenges ahead. Every moment spent seeking validation from others is a moment stolen from creating something worthy of that validation. What if you tried something different? Imagine disappearing from social media for a while, not out of defeat, but out of focused determination. Picture yourself declining to share your progress at family gatherings, not because you have nothing to report, but because you're strategically protecting your creative energy. Consider what might happen if, instead of announcing your intentions, you simply let your actions speak for themselves. This mindset transformation alone could be the hidden catalyst that finally brings your dreams into reality. If these insights about working in silence resonated with you, hit subscribe to join our community of focused achievers. There's much more wisdom waiting for you on this journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and reveal something that most people completely overlook about the creative process. When you engage in conversations about your future plans, something costly happens behind the scenes of your mind. Each time you explain your vision, you're forced to organize your thoughts, address questions, and process others' reactions, all of which consume precious mental resources that could have been directed toward actual progress. Think about it this way. Your mind has a limited amount of decision-making energy each day. Every choice, explanation, and social interaction draws from this same reservoir. When you maintain silence about your journey, you're essentially protecting this vital resource, creating a shield around your vision that keeps it safe from external doubts and distractions. This preserved mental clarity becomes the invisible advantage that keeps you aligned with your true direction when others find themselves constantly veering off course. History reveals this pattern repeatedly among those who've made the greatest impact on our world. Consider Thomas Edison's approach to innovation, a revelation that fundamentally changed my understanding of the creative process. His most groundbreaking inventions didn't emerge from public brainstorming sessions or progress updates posted on bulletin boards. They were born in the sacred space of his silent workshop, where he experimented through thousands of failures without an audience witnessing his process. This privacy wasn't just a preference, it was a deliberate strategy that allowed him the freedom to make mistakes, pursue unconventional ideas, and learn without the judgment that inevitably comes with visibility. While others talked about their theories and intentions, Edison's hands remained busy as his mouth stayed still. This formula, constant action paired with strategic silence, created the perfect conditions for breakthrough achievement. The most profound truth I've discovered is that this approach isn't reserved for geniuses or historical figures. It's a methodology available to anyone willing to embrace the transformative power of working behind the scenes. When you remove the pressure of constant explanation and the distraction of premature feedback, you create a sacred space where your authentic creativity can flourish without interference. What if the very act of keeping your plans private became the turning point in your journey? What unseen revelations might emerge when you finally give yourself permission to work without the burden of constant updates and explanations? The mindset shift required is subtle but profound, a decision to value actual progress over the appearance of it. If you're resonating with this message so far, write in the comments, "Silence is my strategy," and let's see how many others are embracing this powerful approach to achievement. The fascinating thing about this principle is how it creates a ripple effect that touches every area of your creative process, allowing you to nurture what matters most, your ideas. And these ideas, when properly protected, become the foundation of everything meaningful you'll ever create. Consider this illuminating metaphor. Your nascent ideas are like delicate seedlings just breaking through the soil. They have immense potential, but their roots are shallow, their stems fragile. What happens when you repeatedly uproot such a seedling to show others its progress? The exposure damages its developing root system, subjects it to harsh elements it's not ready to withstand, and ultimately compromises its ability to grow strong. This is precisely what happens when you prematurely expose your ideas to the world. The revelation that transformed my own creative journey was understanding that ideas require a protective darkness to establish strong foundations before facing the harsh light of criticism. There's a hidden truth here that most overlook. People naturally judge new concepts based on what already exists, not what could be. This makes early exposure particularly dangerous for truly innovative thinking. The very kind that changes the world often seems absurd when first presented. This protective silence isn't about secrecy. It's about creating the optimal environment for your ideas to develop their full strength and clarity before facing inevitable resistance. It's a deliberate sanctuary you create around your creative process, allowing your vision to mature at its natural pace, rather than being stunted by premature judgment. One of history's most profound examples of this principle in action comes from Abraham Lincoln, whose leadership journey offers us a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the power of private development. Few people realize that Lincoln wrote numerous speeches and letters he never sent, instead storing them away in his desk drawer. This wasn't indecision, it was strategic brilliance. This private writing process allowed him complete freedom of thought without concern. For immediate reactions, he could explore controversial ideas, work through complex arguments, and refine his thinking without the pressure of public scrutiny. The impact was transformative. When he eventually did share his words publicly, think of the Gettysburg Address, they had been refined through deep contemplation rather than shaped by committee thinking or premature feedback, giving them remarkable power and clarity that still resonates today. The wisdom here transcends historical context. In your own journey, creating this private space for your ideas to develop, whether through journaling, private documentation, or simply keeping your plans close, might be the very catalyst that allows your most meaningful work to emerge in its full potency, rather than being diluted by outside influence. This reminds me of a question worth considering. What ideas have you shared too early that withered under premature exposure? Or perhaps more importantly, what vision are you currently nurturing that deserves the protection of silence? If you've experienced this phenomenon firsthand, comment below with "My seedlings need darkness," and we'll know exactly what you mean. Now let's explore how this principle of protective silence creates another unexpected advantage in your creative process that affects the very biochemistry of your motivation. Research in neuroscience has revealed a fascinating hidden truth about goal achievement that explains why so many ambitious plans never materialize. When you announce your intentions publicly, your brain actually triggers the same reward centers as if you had already accomplished the goal. This creates what I call the psychological validation trap, a dangerous satisfaction loop where simply talking about your plans gives you enough dopamine to feel good without actually doing the work. This revelation completely transformed my understanding of motivation. Think about it. Every time you tell someone about your exciting new business idea, fitness plan, or creative project, you're essentially giving yourself an unearned neurological reward. Your brain, which cannot easily distinguish between genuine accomplishment and the social validation of announcing plans, marks the task as partially complete in your mental accounting system. The consequence is subtle but profound. You feel less urgency to take real action because you've already received a portion of the psychological reward. This explains the journey of countless unfulfilled aspirations that began with enthusiastic announcements and ended in quiet abandonment. The excitement that should have fueled consistent action was prematurely released through conversation rather than channeled into creation. By contrast, when you keep your plans private, you maintain a healthy psychological tension between your current reality and your desired outcome. This gap, this productive discomfort, becomes the very catalyst that drives persistent action. The brain, hungry for resolution and completion, pushes you forward day after day until the real accomplishment delivers the genuine neurological reward it's been seeking. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and explore another dimension of working in silence that produces extraordinary results. Beyond the psychological advantages, silence creates something increasingly rare in today's world. A distraction-free sanctuary where your focus remains completely undiluted, without the constant pull to document, share, and update others on your progress. You maintain a state of deep concentration that allows you to solve complex problems and create genuine value. This focused state is where true mastery develops, in the uninterrupted flow of dedicated work without the fragmentation of external communication. Consider the radical difference between these two scenarios. In one, you're constantly breaking your concentration to craft updates about what you're doing. In the other, your mind remains fully immersed in the work itself, reaching deeper levels of insight and creativity with each uninterrupted hour. The mind works much like water. When it's constantly disturbed, it remains shallow and turbulent, reflecting only fragmented images. But when allowed to settle in silence, it becomes deep, clear, and capable of profound reflection. This is the transformative power of building without distraction, creating an environment where your best thinking can emerge naturally. If you've experienced those rare moments of complete absorption in meaningful work, when time seems to disappear and solutions appear effortlessly, share flow state achieved in the comments below. Let's explore how this principle of protected focus connects to another crucial aspect of creative achievement that often goes unrecognized: the protection from premature criticism. One of the most significant revelations on my own creative journey was understanding how even well-intentioned feedback on undeveloped ideas can completely derail progress. There's an uncomfortable truth here. Early criticism naturally targets the weakest aspects of your concept, precisely the parts that are still forming and most vulnerable to doubt. Think about the delicate architecture of a new idea. In its early stages, not all components have equal strength. Some elements are clear and compelling, while others remain undefined, sketches awaiting detail. When you expose this work in progress to outside perspectives, what happens? Almost invariably, the feedback gravitates toward the unfinished parts, the very areas where you haven't yet developed strong foundations or clear solutions. Subscribe now if you're committed to creating meaningful work through focused silence. Every video brings you one step closer to mastering the power of strategic quiet. This creates a dangerous imbalance in your perception. Rather than seeing the potential in what you've begun, you become fixated on addressing perceived flaws before the concept has had time to fully emerge. The transformation that occurs is subtle but devastating. A shift from creative expansion to premature problem-solving. By working silently until your idea matures, you ensure it's evaluated on its strongest, most developed version rather than its earliest, most fragile iteration. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing perhaps the most profound benefit of strategic silence: how it cultivates wisdom from the inside out. There's a direct relationship between external quietude and internal clarity that few people recognize. The quieter your external voice becomes, the louder your internal wisdom grows. This isn't mystical thinking, it's practical psychology. Silence creates sacred space for reflection, allowing you to hear your own insights rather than being constantly overwhelmed by outside opinions. In the absence of noise, subtle patterns become visible. Connections between seemingly unrelated concepts emerge naturally. Solutions appear not through force, but through clarity. This is the birthplace of genuine innovation, not in the clamor of group brainstorming, but in the profound stillness of focused contemplation. This inward focus builds something increasingly rare in our hyper-connected world: true discernment. The ability to distinguish between valuable information and mere noise becomes a superpower in an age of information overload. As you practice hearing your own thoughts clearly, you develop a heightened sensitivity to what deserves your attention and what doesn't. This naturally leads to more thoughtful decisions and authentic progress aligned with your deepest values rather than external validation. Consider how this principle manifested in the journeys of history's most influential thinkers. From Einstein's thought experiments to Darwin's private reflections, transformative insights typically emerged not from constant social processing, but from protected periods of contemplation where original thinking could flourish undisturbed. Have you noticed how your best ideas often come when you're alone? Perhaps while walking, showering, or sitting quietly without digital distractions. If you've experienced these moments of unexpected clarity, drop inner wisdom activated in the comments. Let's examine how this cultivation of internal wisdom connects to another crucial dimension of working in silence that fundamentally transforms how you develop mastery itself. There's a hidden pattern in successful achievement that rarely gets discussed, the necessity of private momentum building. Think of it like a plane preparing for takeoff. There's a critical period where the aircraft must accelerate down the runway before it can lift into the sky. During this phase, to an outside observer, it might seem like nothing impressive is happening, just a plane moving horizontally, still bound to the earth. Yet this acceleration phase is absolutely essential for flight. Without building sufficient momentum on the ground, takeoff becomes impossible. This perfect metaphor reveals a profound truth about achievement. Your early efforts often appear unimpressive to outside observers, while being absolutely critical to your eventual breakthrough. Working in privacy creates the perfect conditions for this momentum-building phase to unfold naturally, without the weight of others' premature judgments or expectations. The transformation that occurs behind closed doors allows you to navigate the awkward learning stages that everyone must pass through on the path to mastery. Think about learning any new skill. Those first attempts are almost always clumsy, inefficient, and far from impressive. When you work in private, you create sacred space for these necessary mistakes and iterations without the added pressure of an audience. You gain the freedom to crash and burn 100 times, knowing that when you finally emerge, people will see only the polished result, not the messy process that created it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing an unexpected revelation that emerges when you embrace strategic silence, the natural filtering of your social circle. When you work quietly, something remarkable happens. You discover who genuinely supports you versus who merely enjoys the entertainment of your journey. This insight into human nature might be uncomfortable, but it's incredibly valuable. Consider this. Some people in your life are only interested in you when you're providing regular updates, drama, or something to gossip about. These fair-weather friends quickly lose interest when there's no ongoing story to follow. Without the constant feed of information about your struggles and small wins, they simply drift away to find entertainment elsewhere. Their departure isn't a loss. It's clarification. They were never truly supporting you. They were consuming you. By contrast, your authentic supporters remain steadfast. Without requiring constant proof of your progress, they believe in you whether they see what you're working on or not. Their faith isn't contingent on regular updates or being included in every step of your journey. When you finally reveal what you've been building, these people celebrate with genuine joy rather than with the hungry curiosity of those who simply want more content for their mental newsfeed. This natural filtering process reveals your true community, people who believe in you as a person rather than in the story you provide. It's like having a powerful sorting mechanism that automatically separates superficial connections from meaningful relationships, leaving you with a smaller but infinitely more valuable support system. If you've ever experienced this filtering effect in your own life, whether by intention or circumstance, share quality over quantity in the comments. Let's explore how this principle of authentic connection relates to another powerful dimension of working in silence that addresses perhaps the most significant obstacle to meaningful achievement, the management of ego. There's a subtle but powerful transformation that happens when you discuss your work prematurely. The praise you receive feeds your ego instead of developing your skills. This creates one of the most dangerous mindset shifts on the creative journey, the illusion of success before you've actually earned it. Consider what happens in this scenario. You share your half-formed project or business idea, and naturally, those who care about you respond with encouragement. "That sounds amazing," or "You're so talented," or "I can't wait to see it." Their words feel wonderful in the moment, providing a surge of confidence and validation. But hidden within this pleasant experience is a psychological trap. Your brain begins to perceive itself as already successful when you've barely begun. This premature satisfaction is like eating dessert before you've prepared the meal. It diminishes your hunger for the real work. Why would you push through the difficult challenges of execution when you've already received the emotional reward of accomplishment? This revelation explains why many potentially great creators become permanently stuck in the promising phase. They've become addicted to talking about their work rather than improving it. Silence offers a powerful antidote to this pattern. By working without seeking validation, you maintain a healthy humility that keeps you focused on the gap between your current abilities and your aspirations. This productive discomfort, this awareness of how far you still have to go, becomes the very fuel that drives continued growth rather than complacency. Your hunger for improvement remains sharp, precisely because it hasn't been dulled by premature praise. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how one of history's most influential writers embodied this principle. Ernest Hemingway developed a discipline that protected the authenticity of his creative process. He wrote early each morning before speaking to anyone. This wasn't merely a scheduling preference, it was a deliberate shield against the contamination of external influence. By refusing to discuss his daily progress, even with those closest to him, Hemingway maintained unwavering focus on the quality of his work rather than on how it might impress others. He faced the blank page each morning with no audience, except his own standards, no borrowed confidence from yesterday's compliments, no defensive posture from previous criticism. This purity of approach ensured his writing remained honest and powerful, driven by internal truth rather than external expectations. The revelation here transcends writing. This discipline of protected creation applies to any meaningful work. When you separate the act of creation from the act of sharing, when you build a wall between making and displaying, you preserve the integrity of your process. Your decisions remain guided by what serves the work itself, rather than what might earn approval or avoid criticism. If this principle of ego management resonates with your experience, type "authentic creation" in the comments below. Let's explore how this cultivation of honest work connects to another dimension of silent achievement that few recognize but all great creators instinctively understand. That creates a powerful form of attraction in both personal and professional realms. There's a fascinating psychological principle at work when you maintain strategic silence about your endeavors. You naturally create an aura of intrigue and respect. When others cannot easily access your thoughts, plans, and daily activities, they perceive greater value in what you eventually choose to share. This isn't manipulation, it's human nature. We inherently assign more significance to what is rare, mysterious, or difficult to obtain. Consider how this plays out in various contexts. The artist who releases work sparingly, the leader who speaks only when necessary, the entrepreneur who reveals products only when fully developed. These figures typically command far more attention and respect than those who constantly broadcast every minor thought and activity. The transformation that occurs through strategic silence is profound, but often overlooked. By carefully curating what you reveal, and when you reveal it, you build a compelling personal brand that stands out in an age of oversharing. Your words carry weight precisely because they are not constantly diluted by stream of consciousness updates and half-formed thoughts. When you do speak, people listen, not because you've demanded their attention, but because you've earned it through the power of purposeful restraint. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing perhaps the most liberating aspect of working in silence, the profound freedom from external expectations. There's a hidden burden that comes with public announcements of your plans and aspirations. When others know what you're working toward, their expectations, whether supportively encouraging or skeptically doubtful, inevitably begin to influence your decisions and timeline. Consider the subtle pressure that emerges, the well-meaning friend who asks for updates every time you meet, the family member who reminds you of your stated deadline, the colleague who questions why you've changed approach from what you initially described. Each interaction creates a subtle but powerful force, pulling you toward consistency with your original announcement, rather than allowing organic evolution of your thinking. Working in silence grants you a rare form of creative freedom, the ability to follow your authentic development process wherever it leads. You can pivot when necessary, abandon approaches that aren't working, or completely reinvent your method without explaining or disappointing others. You're liberated to make decisions based solely on what the work itself requires, rather than managing external perceptions of your journey. This revelation completely transformed my own creative process. I discovered that my best work emerged not when I was performing for an audience throughout development, but when I followed my own internal compass without the constant recalibration required by external feedback. The freedom to explore, experiment, and even fail privately creates a sacred space where genuine innovation can flourish, where the work can become what it needs to be rather than what you initially promised it would be. If you've ever felt the weight of others' expectations influencing your creative decisions, or if you crave this kind of liberation in your own journey, share Freedom to Evolve in the comments below. Let's explore another dimension of silent achievement that connects directly to your capacity for sustainable success, that profoundly impacts your relationship with time itself. One of the most valuable transformations that emerges through working in silence is the cultivation of genuine patience, a virtue increasingly rare in our instant gratification culture. When you resist the urge for immediate recognition and validation, you develop something far more valuable, the capacity to delay gratification for greater future rewards. Consider how this plays out in the creative journey. When you're not receiving constant external validation, you must find satisfaction in the work itself, rather than in others' responses to it. This shifts your focus from short-term dopamine hits to long-term value creation. You begin to appreciate the slow, often invisible progress that accumulates day by day, the foundational work that may not appear impressive, but creates the conditions for eventual breakthrough. This patience becomes a remarkable competitive advantage in a world dominated by instant gratification seekers who quickly abandon efforts when quick results don't materialize. While others jump from project to project, constantly chasing the next dopamine hit of external validation, you develop the staying power to persist through the inevitable plateaus and challenges that precede any meaningful achievement. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining a historical revelation that perfectly illustrates the power of undistracted solitude. Few people realize that one of humanity's greatest intellectual breakthroughs emerged not from the bustling academic environment of a university, but from forced isolation during a pandemic. When the Great Plague of London closed Cambridge University in 1665, a young Isaac Newton retreated to his family home in the countryside for what would become known as his Year of Wonders. For 18 transformative months, Newton worked in complete isolation, without academic pressure, without the need to impress colleagues, without the distraction of constant intellectual debate. This period of protected contemplation produced what would eventually become the foundations of calculus and his revolutionary laws of motion, achievements that quite possibly might never have emerged in a more public, interruption-filled environment. What's particularly fascinating about Newton's story is the behind-the-scenes glimpse it provides into the ideal conditions for breakthrough thinking. Without the burden of constantly communicating and defending his developing ideas, his mind enjoyed complete freedom to explore radical concepts that defied conventional wisdom. This sacred space of undistracted thought allowed him to follow threads of inquiry that might have seemed too outlandish or unproductive to pursue in a more scrutinized environment. The revelation here extends far beyond physics or mathematics. It speaks to a universal principle of creative development. Your most original thinking, your most innovative solutions often require a similar sanctuary of protected contemplation. A space where half-formed concepts can develop without premature judgment, where unconventional connections can emerge without immediate justification, where your mind can wander down unexplored pathways that might just lead to your own personal breakthrough. If you've ever experienced a moment of clarity or insight that came only after periods of undisturbed thinking, whether during a long walk, a shower, or time away from digital distractions, type "sanctuary of thought" in the comments below. Let's examine how this principle of protected mental space connects to another dimension of silent achievement that creates extraordinary momentum in your journey, that dramatically accelerates your rate of achievement. There's a hidden phenomenon I've observed in both my own journey and those of extraordinary achievers across fields, what I call the focus multiplier effect. When you work in silence, without the constant interruption of explaining your process to others, your progress doesn't just increase. Linearly, it accelerates exponentially. Think about the profound difference between these two scenarios. In one, you work for an hour, then spend 20 minutes explaining what you did to someone interested in your progress. In another, you simply continue working for that additional 20 minutes. On the surface, this might seem like a modest difference, just 20 minutes more productive time. But the revelation lies in understanding what actually happens to your cognitive flow. Every time you shift from creation to explanation, you experience what psychologists call a context switch, a costly mental transition that requires significantly more energy than simply continuing focused work. Each interruption doesn't just consume the time spent explaining. It fragments your mental state, requiring additional time and energy to rebuild the deep focus essential for breakthrough thinking. This compound effect means that those working quietly often accomplish in months what others achieve in years. The simple practice of disciplined silence creates a remarkable competitive advantage, the ability to maintain sustained periods of unbroken concentration that produce exponentially greater results than fragmented attention ever could. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing another dimension of silent work that protects your most precious resource, your creative energy. When you share your work in progress openly, you inevitably expose yourself to what I call energy vampires, people who often unintentionally drain your enthusiasm through doubt, excessive questioning, or casual dismissal of your efforts. Consider how these interactions typically unfold. Someone asks about your project, you share with genuine excitement, and they respond with, "Has anyone done that before?" or "That sounds really difficult," or simply "interesting," with a tone that suggests otherwise. Each of these moments may seem minor in isolation, but cumulatively they deplete the psychological resources essential for creative work. The most insidious aspect of these interactions is that they often come from well-meaning people, friends, family, and colleagues who aren't trying to discourage you. They're simply responding with their natural skepticism or limited understanding of your vision. But the impact on your enthusiasm remains the same, creating tiny punctures in your psychological momentum that slowly deflate your drive. Working in silence serves as a protective shield, preserving your vital energy for productive use rather than defensive explanations. It creates a sanctuary where your enthusiasm can flourish undiluted by others' limitations or concerns. This conservation of creative energy becomes particularly crucial during the early, vulnerable stages of any meaningful project, the period when your vision is clear to you but difficult to articulate to others. If you've ever felt that strange deflation of energy after sharing an exciting idea only to receive lukewarm or questioning responses, type "energy protected" in the comments below. Let's explore how this preservation of vital creative force connects to another critical dimension of working in silence that creates the psychological safety essential for any breakthrough achievement. One of the most powerful revelations about working in silence is how it provides the privacy to fail constructively without public shame. Think about the profound difference in your willingness to take risks when no one is watching versus when you have an audience. The transformation in your psychological freedom is remarkable. When your attempts, experiments, and inevitable setbacks occur privately, you escape the natural human fear of judgment that otherwise constrains bold action. This creates a safe space for the risk-taking and experimentation that are absolutely essential for innovation and mastery. Consider any significant skill you've developed or achievement you've realized. The journey undoubtedly included numerous failures, awkward attempts, and dead ends before you found the right approach. Working in silence allows you to navigate these necessary failures without the added burden of managing others' perceptions or expectations. When no one witnesses your missteps, you remain psychologically free to push boundaries and test limits that would feel too threatening under observation. This freedom creates the ideal conditions for genuine growth, the ability to attempt, fail, learn, and iterate rapidly without the friction of external judgment slowing your progress. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing a fascinating anthropological insight that explains why strategic silence is not just psychologically beneficial, but cognitively essential. Renowned anthropologist Robin Dunbar demonstrated through extensive research that humans can maintain only about 150 meaningful relationships, a cognitive limit hardwired into our social processing capacity. This revelation has profound implications for how you manage your creative energy. Every person who knows about your plans unconsciously becomes someone you feel obligated to update on your progress. Each relationship creates an invisible thread of attention and responsibility that pulls on your limited mental bandwidth. As these connections multiply, they create a growing cognitive burden that fragments your focus and diverts energy from the work itself. Strategic silence helps manage this limited social bandwidth, preserving your mental resources for the relationships and communications that truly matter. Rather than diluting your attention across dozens or hundreds of casual connections, all expecting updates, you concentrate your social energy on the few relationships that provide genuine support and meaningful feedback when the time is right. This principle explains why many accomplished creators naturally become more selective about sharing their works in progress as they mature in their craft. It's not about becoming secretive or antisocial. It's about recognizing the finite nature of our cognitive resources and deploying them strategically for maximum impact rather than dispersing them thinly across too many channels. If you've ever felt that strange sense of cognitive overload from maintaining too many active connections or update loops, drop "bandwidth protected" in the comments below. Let's explore how this principle of cognitive resource management connects to another powerful dimension of working in silence that transforms how others perceive your leadership, that fundamentally transforms your impact on others and your capacity for genuine leadership. There's a profound difference between leaders who constantly talk about their vision and those who quietly embody it through consistent action. Silent leaders command a unique form of respect, one that emerges not through declaration, but through demonstration. Consider the contrast in how we respond to these two approaches. The first person enthusiastically announces their values, their intentions, and their plans at every opportunity. They speak eloquently about principles and vision. The second person says little about their values. They simply live them consistently and without fanfare. Their actions reveal their character more authentically than words ever could. Which person ultimately earns your deeper trust and respect? By focusing on embodying principles rather than announcing them, you develop an authentic leadership style that inspires through example rather than rhetoric. This transformation in approach creates a fundamentally different relationship with those around you, attracting followers who are motivated by your actual impact rather than your persuasive promises. These followers tend to be more committed, more genuine in their support, and more willing to weather challenges alongside you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing perhaps the most powerful form of communication available to any creator, entrepreneur, or changemaker. When you let your results speak for you, the message carries an undeniable credibility that words alone could never achieve. This shift from telling to showing represents a quantum leap in your persuasive impact. Think about how differently we receive these two communications. Someone tells you they're excellent at something versus someone simply demonstrates that excellence without comment. The silent demonstration requires no elaboration or defense. It presents accomplished facts rather than future possibilities. The evidence speaks directly to our experience rather than requiring our faith or imagination. This form of communication through demonstration establishes a reputation built on reliability and substance. People begin to recognize a pattern. You deliver before you declare, you create before you claim. This pattern generates a rare form of trust that becomes a precious asset in both personal and professional realms. People learn that your actions precede your words rather than struggling to catch up to them. The revelation here is that your most powerful statements aren't made with your voice. They're made with your hands, your decisions, your consistent choices, the completed project, the launched business, the transformed physique, the mastered skill. These accomplishments communicate with an authority that renders explanations unnecessary. They answer questions before they're asked, and silence doubts more effectively than any defense ever could. If this principle of letting your achievements speak louder than your announcements resonates with your own values and approach, type silent evidence in the comments below. Let's explore how this powerful form of demonstration-based communication connects to another dimension of working in silence that protects you from one of the most common pitfalls in any creative endeavor, that safeguards you from one of the most common causes of promising ventures failing before reaching their potential. There's a critical pattern I've observed across fields, from business to creative projects to personal development initiatives, that explains why so many initially promising efforts ultimately collapse: premature scaling. When your work generates early attention or interest, there's a natural but dangerous pressure to expand faster than your foundations can support. This external enthusiasm creates a seductive pull toward growth before you've perfected your core offering. It's like building additional floors on a house whose foundation is still setting. The structure might stand temporarily, but eventually, the weight becomes unsustainable. Working in silence provides a powerful shield against this pressure. Without public attention, creating artificial timelines or expectations, you gain the freedom to establish rock-solid foundations before expanding. This patient approach ensures that when you do scale, your growth is sustainable, built on proven capabilities rather than speculative potential or external pressure. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing an ancient wisdom that has guided exceptional creators for centuries, but is increasingly forgotten in our visibility-obsessed culture. Throughout history, true craftsmen, whether woodworkers, metalsmiths, composers, or writers, typically worked without an audience until their creation was complete. This wasn't merely tradition. It reflected a profound understanding of the creative process itself. The craftsman's approach recognizes that meaningful work requires a protective space free from external judgment during its development. Each creation passes through awkward, unfinished stages that, if exposed prematurely, might be misunderstood or devalued. By keeping these intermediate phases private, the craftsman honors the natural evolution of quality, allowing each element to develop fully before integration into the whole. Consider a master furniture maker crafting a fine cabinet. During construction, there might be exposed joints, unfinished surfaces, or temporary supports that would appear flawed to an untrained eye. Yet these imperfections are simply necessary stages in a proven process. The craftsman doesn't invite visitors to evaluate the piece midway through. They reveal it only when every element has reached its intended state. By adopting this craftsman's mindset in your own endeavors, you create the conditions for work of lasting quality rather than rushed mediocrity. You give yourself permission to follow the natural rhythm of development, to take the time required for excellence rather than compromising to meet external expectations or arbitrary deadlines. This approach stands in stark contrast to our culture's emphasis on constant visibility and performative creation. The revelation here transcends specific fields. It's about honoring the integrity of the developmental process itself. Whether you're building a business, developing a skill, creating art, or transforming your health, the principle remains. Quality emerges from protected incubation, not from premature exposure. If you recognize the wisdom in this craftsman's approach to creation, type "quality over speed" in the comments below. Let's explore how this principle of protected development connects to another dimension of working in silence that creates unexpected clarity in your approach, that leads to an unexpected breakthrough in your approach to any meaningful work. There's a fascinating psychological shift that occurs when you work privately versus publicly, one that directly impacts the quality and effectiveness of your results. When working with an audience, even an anticipated future audience, there's a natural human tendency to add unnecessary complexity as you try to impress observers with sophisticated approaches. This performative complexity manifests in countless ways. The entrepreneur who adopts trendy business jargon rather than speaking plainly, the writer who uses elaborate sentence structures rather than clear communication, the designer who adds unnecessary elements to appear more technical or advanced. Each of these represents a subtle corruption of purpose, a shift from serving the work itself to serving perceptions of the work. Privacy creates a remarkable antidote to this tendency. When you work without an audience, you're free to embrace the most direct and effective methods without concern for how they appear to others. This permission to pursue simplicity typically yields superior results precisely because your focus remains on outcomes rather than appearances. The question driving your decisions becomes what works best rather than what looks most impressive. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing perhaps the most strategic element of working in silence, the power of perfectly timed revelation. There's a profound difference in impact between sharing your work progressively throughout its development versus unveiling it at precisely the right moment. This difference explains why some launches or reveals generate explosive momentum, while others, despite similar quality, barely create a ripple. Think of this principle like a master chess player who makes moves that only reveal their brilliant strategy several turns later. During the intermediate stages, observers might question or underestimate these moves because they can't yet see the complete vision. But when the strategy finally reveals itself, the impact is dramatically amplified by the element of surprise and the comprehensive nature of the revelation. Strategic silence allows you to work toward a vision that others can't yet see or fully appreciate. Rather than explaining your incomplete process or defending early-stage decisions, you continue building methodically until everything aligns perfectly. This calculated approach creates moments of revelation that appear almost magical to observers who didn't witness the preparation, iteration, and refinement behind the scenes. Consider how this principle plays out in various contexts. The artist who reveals a complete collection rather than individual pieces. The entrepreneur who launches a fully developed product rather than describing features in development. The writer who presents a completed manuscript rather than sharing chapters in progress. In each case, the impact of the complete vision far exceeds the cumulative effect of incremental updates. This strategic timing represents a transformation in how you communicate your value to the world, moving from constant updates that dilute impact to concentrated moments of revelation that maximize it. It's not about hiding your work permanently. It's about understanding precisely when exposure serves your purpose rather than diminishing it. If you've experienced the power of perfect timing in your own creative journey, type strategic revelation in the comments below. Let's explore how this principle of calculated timing connects to another dimension of working in silence that strengthens perhaps the most important muscle in your success toolkit, that develops perhaps the most valuable leadership quality you can possess. When you work silently, something remarkable happens to your decision-making process. You build the essential muscle of making choices without seeking external validation. Each decision becomes an exercise in trusting your own judgment rather than collecting opinions or outsourcing your thinking to others. Consider how differently decisions unfold in these two scenarios. In one, you encounter a challenge and immediately seek input from several people before choosing a direction. In another, you sit with the same challenge, examine it from multiple angles, and arrive at a conclusion based on your own analysis and intuition. The transformation happens not in the decision itself, but in the mental pathway that produced it. This practice of independent judgment gradually builds decision-making confidence that becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. Each time you make a choice that proves effective, your trust in your own discernment grows stronger. This isn't about ignoring valuable input. It's about developing the capacity to evaluate information on your own terms, rather than deferring to others' perspectives by default. This quality of decisive confidence distinguishes exceptional performers in virtually every field. The leader who can calmly assess complex situations and determine direction without constant consultation. The creative who can evaluate their own work against their internal standards rather than waiting for approval. The entrepreneur who can navigate uncertainty based on their own analysis rather than following the crowd. Each demonstrates this same fundamental strength. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing a fascinating historical pattern that validates everything we've discussed. When we examine civilization's most transformative breakthroughs, we discover a striking commonality in how they emerged. From Einstein developing relativity through his famous thought experiments to Mozart, composing symphonies in his mind before committing them to paper, history's most revolutionary ideas typically developed in periods of quiet concentration before changing the world. Einstein himself described how his most significant insights came not from laboratory work or academic discussion, but from quiet contemplation, imagining himself riding alongside a beam of light or visualizing elevators accelerating through space. These private mental journeys, protected from premature criticism or misunderstanding, allowed concepts to develop that defied the scientific consensus of his time. This historical pattern reveals a fundamental truth about innovation and breakthrough thinking. Truly, revolutionary ideas require protective silence to mature before they can withstand public scrutiny. When concepts fundamentally challenge existing paradigms, they need time to develop sufficient strength and clarity before facing the inevitable resistance that accompanies anything truly new or different. The revelation here extends beyond famous historical figures. It applies directly to your own creative journey. Your most valuable insights, your most innovative solutions, your most meaningful contributions will likely emerge not from constant collaboration or public processing, but from creating space for your unique perspective to develop fully before sharing it with the world. If you've ever had an important insight or idea come to you during a moment of quiet reflection, perhaps while walking alone, sitting in nature, or simply disconnecting from external input, type "solitary breakthrough" in the comments below. Let's explore how this historical pattern of protected development connects to another crucial dimension of working in silence that fundamentally transforms your relationship with motivation itself. There's a powerful shift that occurs when you work in silence, one that redirects your source of drive from external validation to internal satisfaction. This transformation might seem subtle at first, but its long-term impact on your resilience and sustainability is profound. When your work is constantly visible, there's a natural tendency to measure its value through others' reactions. Each like, comment, share, or compliment delivers a small dopamine hit that feels rewarding in the moment but creates a dangerous dependency. You begin to crave this external approval, unconsciously shaping your work to maximize positive feedback rather than authentic expression or effectiveness. Working silently disrupts this cycle by removing the immediate feedback loop. Without constant external reinforcement, you're compelled to develop a different relationship with motivation, one powered by alignment with your own standards and values rather than others' opinions. You learn to recognize and appreciate the quiet satisfaction of work well done according to your own metrics, the deep fulfillment of progress that only you can see. This shift toward intrinsic motivation creates remarkable resilience that becomes evident during inevitable challenges and setbacks. When external encouragement disappears, as it always does during difficult periods, those dependent on outside validation often falter and abandon their efforts. But when your drive comes from within, you possess the stability to continue advancing even when no one is watching, cheering, or acknowledging your progress. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing a pragmatic dimension of working in silence that's particularly relevant in today's hyper-connected world. Beyond the psychological benefits, silence provides practical protection for your intellectual property. In an increasingly competitive landscape where ideas travel instantaneously and boundaries between creation and appropriation often blur, the uncomfortable reality is that ideas shared prematurely can be appropriated by others who possess more resources, established platforms, or simply greater capacity to execute quickly. This doesn't always happen maliciously. Sometimes it's simply that your concept resonates with someone who then develops their own version without recognizing your original contribution. Regardless of intent, the outcome remains the same. Your creative vision manifests through someone else's execution. Strategic discretion ensures your concepts remain yours until they're sufficiently developed to be either properly protected through legal means or, perhaps more effectively, difficult to replicate due to your advanced implementation. This isn't about paranoia, it's about recognizing the value of your intellectual contributions and creating the conditions for them to reach their full potential under your guidance. This protective silence gives you the opportunity to develop your idea to a stage where your execution has created sufficient momentum and distinctive character that mere imitation becomes difficult or obviously derivative. You're not permanently hiding your work, you're strategically timing its revelation for maximum impact and appropriate attribution. If you've ever experienced that uncomfortable moment of seeing your idea implemented by someone else before you had the chance to fully develop it yourself, or if you appreciate the wisdom of protecting your creative vision, type guarded creation in the comments below. Let's explore how this practical protection connects to another crucial benefit of working in silence that creates the mental environment necessary for exceptional decision-making and vision. In our hyper-connected world, we rarely acknowledge how profoundly our thinking is shaped by the constant influence of others. Perspectives, opinions, and priorities. Silence creates a sacred mental space where genuine clarity can emerge, a rare commodity that becomes an increasingly valuable competitive advantage. When you work in solitude, without the continuous input of external voices, something transformative happens to your perception. You begin to distinguish more easily between what's truly important to your specific vision and what's merely trending or popular in your field. The fog of collective thinking lifts, revealing a clearer path aligned with your authentic purpose rather than borrowed priorities. This clarity functions like a compass during a storm. While others are tossed about by every changing trend, opinion, or approach, you maintain consistent direction toward your most meaningful objectives. You develop the ability to filter noise from signal, to recognize distractions disguised as opportunities, and to maintain focus on high-impact activities that genuinely move you toward your vision, while others chase shiny objects that lead nowhere. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing another crucial protection that working in silence provides: a buffer against the potentially derailing effects of premature negativity. The uncomfortable reality is that every significant endeavor, every meaningful creation, every ambitious vision will inevitably face criticism, skepticism, and resistance. This isn't personal. It's simply the natural response to anything that challenges established patterns or expectations. The timing of when you encounter this opposition, however, makes a profound difference in whether it strengthens or weakens your resolve. When you share your vision too early, when your own conviction is still forming and your concept still developing, even minor criticism can create devastating doubt. Questions like, "Has this been done before?" or "Are you sure that will work?" can plant seeds of uncertainty that grow into abandonment of even the most promising ideas. Working privately creates a protective buffer during this vulnerable development stage. It allows your own belief and understanding to strengthen, your vision to clarify, and your commitment to deepen before facing inevitable challenges. By the time you reveal your work to a wider audience, your conviction has become sufficiently robust to weather criticism that might have derailed you earlier. This isn't about avoiding feedback forever. It's about strategic timing. It's ensuring your vision has sufficient momentum and your belief has adequate foundation before subjecting them to the natural resistance that accompanies anything meaningful or new. This approach doesn't guarantee everyone will embrace your work, but it ensures you'll remain standing when the winds of criticism begin to blow. If you've ever experienced how external negativity or doubt affected your enthusiasm for a project in its early stages, or if you appreciate the wisdom of building conviction before facing opposition, type strengthened resolve in the comments below. Let's explore how this protective buffer connects to another powerful dimension of working in silence that dramatically enhances your ability to create meaningful impact, that cultivates what is quickly becoming the most valuable skill in our distracted world. In an age of constant notifications, endless feeds, and fractured attention, the capacity for what author Cal Newport calls deep work, the state of focused concentration that produces truly meaningful results, has become increasingly rare and proportionately valuable. Silence creates the perfect conditions to develop this capacity. By working without the constant interruption of updates, explanations, and social media sharing, you train your mind to sustain longer periods of unbroken concentration. This is not merely about productivity. It represents a fundamental transformation in your cognitive capabilities, like a muscle that strengthens through consistent exercise. Your ability to focus deeply expands through regular practice in undistracted environments. This expanded capacity for sustained intellectual effort creates a remarkable advantage. While most people can only maintain focus for minutes before seeking distraction, those who cultivate deep work can solve complex problems requiring hours of concentrated thought, challenges that remain perpetually beyond the reach of more fragmented thinkers. Your mind becomes capable of the kind of profound, multi-layered analysis that produces genuine breakthroughs rather than incremental improvements. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the invisible but crucial element that underlies all meaningful creative work: psychological safety. There's a fascinating revelation about the creative process that explains why working in silence often produces more innovative solutions than collaborative brainstorming or public development. Creative work, at its most powerful, requires the freedom to explore unconventional, unusual, or even seemingly absurd ideas without immediate judgment or criticism. When you work publicly, or even with the anticipation of sharing works in progress, your mind unconsciously begins to filter ideas before they're fully formed. You become your own premature critic, dismissing possibilities that might seem too strange, too ambitious, or too difficult to explain to others. This hidden self-censorship happens below conscious awareness, but dramatically restricts your creative range. Working silently creates a protected mental sanctuary where this filtering mechanism relaxes. Your mind becomes free to consider possibilities that might seem too risky to voice publicly, to follow unconventional pathways without immediately justifying them, to make unusual connections without explaining them, to temporarily suspend practical limitations without defending this approach. This psychological safety isn't about avoiding feedback forever. It's about creating space for the initial spark of innovation to develop sufficient strength before facing scrutiny. This protected exploration often leads to the most breakthrough solutions, ideas that emerge only when the mind feels safe enough to venture beyond conventional thinking patterns and established approaches. Some of history's most revolutionary concepts initially appeared bizarre or impractical before their transformative potential became clear. Working in silence gives these fragile innovations the protective space they need to develop before facing the harsh light of conventional evaluation. If you've ever experienced that moment where your mind suddenly feels free to explore wild possibilities when you're alone, versus the self-consciousness that emerges when sharing early-stage ideas, type "safe to create" in the comments below. Let's examine how this psychological freedom connects to another dimension of working in silence that transforms your influence in surprising ways, that reveals a counterintuitive truth about communication and impact. There's a fascinating paradox that emerges when you embrace strategic silence. Your influence often increases when you speak less. This revelation runs contrary to our culture's emphasis on constant visibility and voice, but its effectiveness is supported by both psychological research and historical observation. When you carefully choose when to share your thoughts rather than expressing every passing idea, you create a natural scarcity that enhances their perceived value. Think about how differently we receive information from someone who speaks constantly versus someone who speaks selectively. The frequent communicator's words become common currency, easily accessible, but equally easy to dismiss or ignore. But the selective communicator's insights become rare treasures that command attention precisely because of their scarcity. This strategic restraint transforms not just how others perceive your communication, but how they receive it. When you speak less frequently but with greater intention, people don't just hear your words, they genuinely listen to them. They recognize that when you choose to express something, it carries significance simply because you've deemed it worthy of breaking your productive silence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing a strategic advantage that working in silence creates in competitive environments. Beyond the personal benefits we've explored, quiet progress creates powerful blind spots for competitors who can't adjust to advances they don't see coming. This hidden advantage operates across fields, from business to creative pursuits to personal development. Consider the fundamental difference between these two approaches. When you develop publicly, you essentially telegraph your moves and direction, allowing others to prepare countermeasures or parallel solutions before you fully realized your vision. Your competitors gain valuable time to adapt their strategy, develop alternatives, or position themselves against your emerging approach. Quiet work, by contrast, creates the advantage of surprise, the ability to advance significantly before others recognize your direction or progress. By the time your work becomes visible, you've already established momentum that makes it difficult for others to catch up quickly. This approach has historically allowed underdogs to overcome more established players who didn't see the threat until it was too late to respond effectively. This strategic blind spot creation isn't about permanent secrecy, it's about thoughtful timing. It's recognizing that in many contexts, the element of surprise creates opportunities that would be impossible with continuous transparency. From military strategy to business innovation to artistic breakthrough, history repeatedly demonstrates how calculated revelation often proves more effective than constant visibility. If you've experienced how selective communication created more impact than constant updates, or if you appreciate the strategic advantage of surprise in your field, type tactical silence in the comments below. Let's explore how this competitive advantage connects to another powerful dimension of working in silence that fundamentally changes how you approach problems, that transforms how you approach problems and generates solutions. There's a profound shift that occurs in your thinking patterns when you work in extended silence. You naturally begin building from first principles rather than inherited assumptions. First principles thinking means stripping away accumulated conventions and returning to foundational truths that can't be broken down further, the essential building blocks of understanding. Without the constant influence of conventional wisdom through ongoing discussion and social reinforcement, your mind gains freedom to question basic assumptions that others take for granted. This mental independence creates the perfect conditions for discovering fresh approaches, completely untethered from existing paradigms. Think about how differently you process information when alone versus in conversation. The subtle but powerful way social context shapes which questions feel acceptable to ask, which assumptions seem reasonable to challenge. This independent thinking represents the authentic source of category-defining innovation rather than merely incremental improvements. The most revolutionary breakthroughs, from Einstein's relativity to the personal computer to blockchain technology, emerged not from working within established frameworks, but from someone's willingness to question fundamental assumptions that everyone else accepted without examination. This path to original insight becomes far more accessible when you create protected space for your mind to wander beyond conventional boundaries. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by revealing what might be the ultimate revelation about working in silence, its remarkable compounding effect over time. There's a hidden transformation that occurs through consistent, focused effort protected from fragmentation. Day by day, the quiet worker builds momentum that eventually becomes literally unstoppable, creating breakthroughs that appear sudden to outside observers but actually represent the culmination of sustained, concentrated force. Consider the profound difference between these two approaches to achievement. One person divides their energy between doing the work and constantly communicating about it, explaining progress, managing expectations, responding to feedback, documenting the journey. Another person channels all that same energy directly into the work itself, focusing their full force toward a single point with laser-like precision. This difference in energy concentration creates dramatically different outcomes over time, while scattered efforts produce modest progress across multiple dimensions. Concentrated focus eventually generates enough force to break through barriers that fragmented attention can never penetrate. It's the difference between pouring water across a wide surface versus channeling it through a narrow opening. The same volume creates dramatically different impact through focused direction. This compounding power of silent, focused effort might be life's most underrated competitive advantage. What makes it particularly remarkable is its accessibility. It requires no special talent, privileged background, or rare opportunity. It's available to anyone with the discipline to embrace it, to resist the cultural pull toward constant visibility and validation in favor of the quieter, deeper satisfaction of building genuine momentum. If you recognize this pattern in your own journey, moments where consistent, quiet effort suddenly manifested in what looked like overnight success to others, type compound effect in the comments below. Let's explore how all these dimensions of working in silence come together to create perhaps the most powerful transformation of all. As we've explored this journey through the power of strategic silence, I hope you've discovered something valuable that resonates with your own path. The practice of working quietly, building in solitude, and revealing only when ready isn't just a tactical approach. It's a philosophy that transforms not just what you create, but who you become in the process. If this message found its way to you today, there's likely a reason. Perhaps you've been feeling that pull toward deeper focus, that intuition that your best work lies beyond the noise of constant sharing and validation seeking. Trust that instinct. It's guiding you toward the kind of meaningful achievement that stands the test of time. I'd love to continue this conversation with you in the comments below. If these ideas have stirred something in you, if you're recognizing patterns in your own experience that confirm these principles, simply write "silent power activated" so I know this message reached the right person at the right time. If you found value in these insights, consider subscribing to join our thoughtful community. Each week, we explore these hidden truths about achievement, mindset, and transformation that go beyond the obvious tactics everyone else is sharing. And if this resonated with you, a simple like helps others discover these same ideas when they're ready for them. It's a small action that creates ripples of impact as these principles reach those who need them most. There's a video right here that perfectly complements what we've discussed today, exploring how to maintain this centered focus even in environments designed to fragment your attention. Click and continue with me over there as we deepen this exploration together. Until next time, remember, while the world celebrates noise, true power moves in silence.